13 out of 13 and we're done. Oh! I am never doing this shit again. Most of them were so bad and so boring. I am never doing this again. But let's talk about the final book that I read on this long list. That was a book by Richard Powers called Playground. This is my first Richard Powers. He's not an author I've had any particular interest in, but I was interested in this book because it has, I would say, one of the worst, ugliest covers for a book I've ever read. Unfortunately, the book didn't live up to that bizarre cover. It was unfortunately quite mid, and I was quite bored throughout, and it felt like a good way to end a very mid long list with a very mid final book. So this book is about a group of characters who interact over a very long period of time, and it culminates in them meeting on an island and deciding whether or not they're going to send living cities out into the ocean or some shit. I don't know. The sci-fi stuff in this book is not, well fleshed out. I wasn't a big fan of, I would say, the first 20% of this book. It felt like Powers was really relishing doling out his information sparingly, and for the first 20% of the book, I had no idea what the fuck was happening, and I felt like I was totally on the back foot, and I get really bored of that feeling if it's dragged out. It feels like the correct way to tell this story is in that kind of non-linear format, but I just was not getting on with how the book was doing it, and I find it very difficult to tell between a good book or a bad book when they do stuff like that, and I always err on the side of thinking it's a bad book because it's so easy to just confuse the reader. But regardless of what my overall feelings are on the book, I was engaging very passively with it for the first, I would say, 20% or so. Generally, the movement of the book felt very arbitrary, and there was never any particular reason why we'd focus on one character and not another. I felt that way more in the first half than the second half when things were coalescing. But even in the second half, all I was thinking was, why is Evelyn's chapter here and not Todd's, for example? Does it matter the order that things are told? And I never really felt like it did. And especially in that first half when it's just designed to, like, make your life harder, I didn't feel like there was any reason for the order to be the way it was. It felt quite arbitrary. And again, I like the structure, but when we focus on Eve for like 50 pages or so and then cut back to other stuff like it didn't happen, I was really confused why we'd put it there and not somewhere else. And I feel like everything in a book should have a point. Every time we changed perspective in This Other Eden, for example, it was always the correct way to move the story forward. In this book, I did not feel that at all. Once we get to the point when the islanders start to vote, the book starts to move way more towards its conclusion. But even in that final section when it's coalescing, we cut back randomly to a point where Evelyn wrote a book. Why did that need to be in there at that particular moment? You know, like, it could be told in any order, and it wouldn't really change the effect it had on me. There's a lot of discussion of Richard Powers being a cringe or unsubtle author. As I said, this is my first Powers, and I did feel that, but it didn't mean that I despised the book. Having said that, a lot of the characters are really unsubtle. The character of Todd is one of the better ones, but he's the sort of socially awkward IT guy, so he says things like, people and their emotions puzzle me. They were stupidly complex. You know, it's just like, it's just bad character writing. I think that Richard's writing of the Rafi character was also bizarre. The way Rafi would get mad at people and, like, accuse them of, like, pandering to him, or get mad at his white friends was really weird, and I was confused about whether the author was trying to get me to empathize with his position, or think that he's, like, a bad guy. But Rafi's not the worst character in the book. That is the character of Ina, which is Rafi's, I guess, girlfriend or wife. She is a dreadful character. The bit where Ina gives her 5 things to know about me in the art museum was easily the clunkiest, cringiest, shittest dialogue I've read out of anything in the long list legitimately, and I was trying desperately to imagine realistic reactions to what she was saying. That whole scene with her sculpture was so unsubtle and giga cringe, and I can't believe Powers read that and thought, yep, sounds good to me. Ina gives this massive impassioned monologue that's really structured and formal, and then in the next scene she says, wow, it's heckin' dark in here. Yeah, why be consistent? Why bother? Writing's hard, I understand. She's talking to Todd about why he's doing all of his computer shit, and she says, did something happen to you growing up? Something you're trying to fix? Something you need to give to someone? So unsubtle, so bad, so clunky, so unrealistic. Oh, wow. Why did the author do that? We know why Todd is acting the way he is. Why did Ina have to rationalize it? Ugh. There were plenty of bad Todd quotes as well. One that I wrote down was, today they'd call me an incel, but that would be wrong. Celibate, yes, but not involuntary. Like, okay, would they call you an incel, Todd? Is that what they would do? I did like in those Todd sections how long it postponed introducing the framing and introducing the word you, or like showing who Todd is talking to. I did like that. I thought the Rafi and Todd section stretched on too long though, even though they are kind of the main point of the book. And I was confused about whether I was meant to like Rafi and Ina or whether I was meant to think they were despicable, which is what I indeed thought. It was also so obvious that Todd was going to be in charge of the seasteading project. Like, come on, did you need to play that as a plot twist? It was pretty clear. Another major focus of the story was the character of Evelyn, who I found to be very corny. The first scene when she decides to leave her husband in favor of the ocean was, as I said, super corny, and I did not like her character and her constant, oh, isn't the sea so beautiful and diverse? And everything with the Evelyn character was so close to fucking Inascension that I started to, like, get pissed off at how close it was. And the problem with Evelyn's character is the same problem with Lee from Inascension, which is if you focus on these robotic, nihilistic characters who can't connect to people really, it doesn't really work unless the nihilism is the point. And I found both of these characters, again, robots who I did not enjoy reading about. So yeah, I didn't really like, I would say, most of the main characters, and it sucks that 2 of 3 of those main characters are ones that we are meant to be empathizing with, and I just couldn't. The most interesting thing in the book for me was both the concept of the floating islands and also the islander vote. And so the islander vote gets some focus. They decide on whether the kids should vote or not. That was great. But I feel like too much time is devoted to the Rafi Todd thing. It's that line walking that I found annoying with the book. There were so many moments where I was hoping that the book would tip into hard sci-fi and give a more intense focus, and it doesn't. And I was just constantly wishing it would. And again, I bring up Headshot, which people seem to hate for some reason. Headshot is so committed and it's so intense, and people think it's repetitive and boring because it's so single-minded, that's kind of why I love that book, and why I think this book is a little bit sort of wishy-washy. When we get to the bit in this book where they actually vote, it's the best section in the book, and we spend way too long not doing that kind of stuff. I would have also loved a debate that was more even keel, and the author pretends to be doing that, but he is not. I think there's a lot done here to other the people who are coming in to build the project, which is fine, it's a political novel, but the author is like resorting to stereotype and unsubtle character details to convey that, and I thought that was really annoying. At one point, one of the characters we're supposed to like says, she'd always hated plastic. It was ugly, brazen, and obstinate. Like, is that meant to be a unique trait for the good guys in this book? Do you think the bad guys in this book actually like plastic and think it's pretty or good? I don't think so. The bulk of this story is spent with unlikable, petty characters who are forged with such perfect imperfections from their past traumas. And I was just constantly hoping that the book would focus on the more interesting things it introduces. The floating city thing, which is the hardest sci-fi stuff, gets nary a mention. We don't understand how they work, it's just a thing that is happening. By the end of the book, I did feel something, and even though I was confused by the last 20 or 30 pages, I appreciate that it went into kind of weird territory, but overall I thought the book was bloated and I was wanting it to do other things, and I think the book would have benefited from more likable characters and a structure that felt less arbitrary, especially in the first half. Oh, we're done! The long list is done! 13 out of 13. Okay, so basically, I'll do a shortlist reaction at some point, probably on the day when it happens. I might do a ranking of the long list, I haven't decided yet, but after that there won't be a couple of videos for a while. I have a lot going on, and this took a lot out of me. I want to pivot away from doing Booker content. I might still do the International Booker, I like that, but I'll be spending next year backpacking in the back half, and I won't have time to do the long list or the short list, so I figure now's a good time to kind of sever that tie. Even though the books have sucked, I've enjoyed reading the long list and seeing people talk about them, and I love this community, but I'm done for now with these Booker books. Thank you for watching, God bless, have a good one.